Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this legal compliance session run by Kaizen Synergy Law Firm. My name is Nihal Samara. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director here at Kaizen Synergy Law Firm, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. Today's session forms part of a series of webinars that we have been running specifically focused on the psychosocial laws that are impacting charities. Today's session and next week is going to build on the legal templates and resources that are available for your agency to use. I'm going to jump straight into these legal resources, some of which we've actually shown you over the past few webinars. If you have not attended the past webinars, you're not going to be at a loss because we will be covering these areas again, but also each of the past webinars have been focused specifically on different aspects of the psychosocial laws and what this means for agencies. Of course, this webinar is being recorded all the way up to the question and answer part of the session. So if you did want to watch this webinar after today's live session, these resources are available to you. As always, we'd like to pay our respects to the elders past and present upon the lands on which we all meet. While this session is being run by webinar and recorded all the way up to the Q&A part of the session, we do pay our respects to the traditional owners accordingly from wherever you are joining us around the country today. So let's actually have a look at what we're going to be covering off and what impacts this has directly on your agency. As I mentioned, if you do have any questions as we're going through this, by all means, raise this in the question panel and we will come to these as we go through today's session. So we are looking at the psychosocial laws for charities and what this means for your agency. Now, as always, we put the recommendations up at the start of this session. So this shows you where we are actually going to head and what also legal resources are available to you. So essentially, what we are going to recommend that you do is review the PCBU and HSR obligations. I will cover off what these actually mean. But essentially, this means that if you are an employer or a charity, then you do have specific obligations that your agency does need to meet. The other recommendation is that you access our Gemba 360 dashboard. This is open for your agency to use. And with that, you do have access to a number of key legal templates. These templates have been developed in response to the psychosocial legislative compliance obligations that your agency needs to meet. We are going to cover a number of these off today and just walk you through what you should be doing and how you can actually use these. But essentially, we have a legal memo, which you can circulate out to your agency personnel. We have a policy specifically focused on what the psychosocial legal requirements are, and this is focused on what I'll call the mandatory reporting obligations. There's a code of conduct also in there, and also what we do suggest is that you look at the incident reporting form, and also leading into next week, seek input from agency personnel as well too. And we will be looking at things like the risk register specifically next week. And the risk register is about reporting to your boards on how your agency is meeting your legal compliance obligations. Now, I will add, we have had a question on this just being raised from a agency just asking, does this matter if we are a very small agency or the size of our agency? Does this legal compliance obligations matter? Essentially, yes, it does. So what it means though for your agency, large or small, essentially if you only employ, let's say, a couple of people or so, you'll be able to hopefully respond to any issues pretty quickly or in an ad hoc manner. If you're a very large agency of many hundreds of personnel, then a lot of these codes of conduct and policy requirements, again, you've got the documentation in place to manage this. Now, irrespective of whether you're a small or large agency, I'm going to say the idea of these documents is that it gives you the line in the sand of what you do need to meet, and also puts in structure that your agency does need to have as well too. So whether you're a small agency, you can still use these legal template documents. It's really there so that it allows you to provide a what I'll call a flow chart of what you do need to do. Irrespective, you also need to consider your board reports and demonstrate how you actually meet your legal compliance obligations. And as I mentioned, there are these legal resources that are available to you, and these are available on your Gemba dashboard. Now, a few people have just said, what does this look like? Let me just explain this in a workflow, and then we'll jump into the resources. So essentially, let's say you're an office staff member. You need to inform your personnel about what these legal compliance obligations actually mean, and we have a legal memo that is available. We've got the policies, we've got the code of conduct incident report, and next week we are going to look at the board reporting specifically on this risk register and what you need to actually look at for your board reports, in terms of what you need to meet and where. So let's just have a look at the legal resources and how you get to these. So if I just jump to the website, this is our law firm website, you can simply go to kaizensynergy.com, click on Gemba 360, and it has a link to go to the Gemba dashboard, and it also gives you some further information. Or you can, we will be sending you out an email this afternoon with a recording of these resources and access to your Gemba dashboard. Simply go to gemba360.com. It will ask for your login details, and once you log in via the email, it will take you into this screen here. Now, the legal resources that are actually available to you can be found in a number of places. Now, let's just walk this through so you can see exactly what I am talking about here. So if we start with the memo is about informing your personnel about what the psychosocial laws actually mean. And where we have placed that for you is on your Gemba dashboard. And if I click on, you can see legal updates, psychosocial laws, and I can click on read more. Now, when I click on read more, it'll take me to this screen here. And what I can in fact see when I click on the link is a summary of the legal update. Now, this was something that we actually posted back in February this year, but it summarizes down what the work health and safety legislation is around the country and what are the core changes, which I will actually be going through again today in terms of what it means for your agency. But essentially, it covers off the psychosocial regulations, the inspector powers, the specific areas of mental health, domestic violence, PTSD that your agency needs to be across, and also things like workplace stress and what it means for you and your personnel. We have also listed a series of recommendations, which we have summarized the legislation down, and you can see it is a memo style format, and you can use this to circulate this around to all of your staff. In the other parts of the legal resources, if I just jump back to our slide here, you'll see that we do have a policy and also a code of conduct document. Now, where those are located is in fact under the Gemba Docs side of the screen. And if I click on the Gemba Docs, it will simply take me into this screen here. And here we are. So what I can also do is go to the legal templates, and this is a full policies and procedures register that agencies use. And I have the psychosocial policy documents, and you can see that we've got 3 documents in here. One is the psychosocial policy, and if I click on that, what comes up is a Word document, and this focuses on the reporting side. It is a Word document, so by me simply clicking on Enable Editing allows you to actually open this up. It'll be exactly the same for yourselves as well too. Here we are here, and I can go through and you can see that we've got insert my agency name. So that effectively is the policy side. We also, if we go back to the dashboard, we've got the Psychosocial Code of Conduct document as well too. And where this will come up, here it is here. I can actually open this document up. And if I go back, here it is here, it'll open up. And it actually gives me a full code of practice document in terms of what we need to meet, and also breaks down exactly what the overview, assessment of the risk, controlling the risk. It's a substantive document that is based on the safe work requirements. We've added in some legal areas to give it a bit more context for your agency as well too, but it is there for yourselves to be able to use, and actually gives you, as you can see, everything from the overview right across to identification, assessing, controlling the risks and the likes. The last document that I will add on here that is available to you is also the incident form, and you can find this under the risk management section. And if I click on risk management, then it will bring up this screen here. And if I go to add an incident, then what comes up? Notification of an incident. Importantly, what comes up is this form here. And I can click on add a new entry. And again, this is all resources that are available to you. Now, while we've included the incident form, which you will see, is that your agency is required to actually monitor what type of psychosocial issue has been reported by staff. And you can see the 5 ones here: aggression, bullying, exposure, and also what structures have been put in place to mitigate these risks as well too. Now, someone has just reminded me, who also attended the webinar, that there is one other resources, which is true, which is in the Gemba College, and this is where you will find a copy of all of these recordings, importantly, as well. So if I click on Gemba College, and I go into this section here, you can see that we've got the psychosocial laws and agency obligations. And this actually gives you a list of all the previous webinars on this particular topic. And if I click on that, you can view these here and view these sessions as well too. And you can simply click on those and you're away. So with it, those are the legal resources that are available for you to use as part of attending this webinar series. So what does this mean and why is this important? Well, essentially, when we look at, and we are going to be looking at the risk register next week, about how to identify the hazards, putting what control measures, and how you actually periodically review the risk. So we will be looking at the risk register report for your boards next week. Now, what are the changes and why is this important? I cannot stress this enough for your agencies being not-for-profit charities in terms of the psychosocial laws. So essentially, the proposed regulations require you as employers, so far as reasonably practicable, to identify psychosocial hazards. So that is the key take-home message that you need to be across. Now, as these regulations and work health and safety rules and codes of practice are changing, what it means for you is that the psychosocial hazards, in fact, cover any factors in relation to work design, systems of work, management of work, so you telling staff what to do, carrying out of work or personal work-related interactions that may arise in your employment of staff and may cause an employee to experience one or more negative psychosocial responses that creates a risk to their health and safety. Now, what's important about this definition here, which you can see, this is taken out directly out of the regulations. It talks about and may cause an employee to experience. Now, when you look at psychosocial hazards, what you're needing to look at is things that may cause an employee. And I'm stressing this out a lot here because it is something that it's not that has caused, obviously, that then you need to take actions, and we'll go through what that means. But when you're looking at what may cause an employee, that's where your focus actually needs to be. So these obviously include things like bullying, harassment, aggression or violence, exposure, and these are definitions taken from Safe Work. So high job demands or low job demands, low job control, poor support, poor organizational justice, poor role clarity, poor environmental conditions, remote or isolated work, poor organizational change, low recognition and reward, poor workplace relationships. So if you look at this slide, it is massively broad for your agency and all charities around Australia. So when we're looking at these expected changes, it's things that may cause an employee to experience one or more negative psychosocial responses. But also, if you're looking at what's happened in the last couple of years, well, remote or isolated work, well, that continues as people may work from home. How are you managing all of this at the moment? What about extreme of high job demands versus low job demands? Poor support that you may provide to employees. So the definition, whether you're a local community health service, whether you're a neighborhood house, whether you work right around the country, you can see that there is significant changes that are happening, and you need to be across. And that's why these legal templates are so critically important in terms of what we have developed to support not-for-profit agencies. Now, we'll add that agencies have already started utilizing these legal templates right around the country. And so we have literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agencies that have started to use these templates that I've shown you and actually work these through. Now, essentially what we need to see is how do you then control risks to health and safety with psychosocial, psychological hazards? Well, essentially, you need to look at altering management of work systems using instructions and training, or a combination of one and two. And it also means that you may need to then put in written prevention plans to manage this within your agency. And that means actually looking at prevention plans for aggression or violence, bullying, exposure to traumatic or content or events, high job demands, and sexual harassment. So these written prevention plans, which we will come to next week, actually requires you to provide some detailed responses of how you're actually doing things. And that's why actually looking at incident reporting within your agency is so critically important, because you need to look at this in a very controlled and time measured way. So if someone reports something, how do you know that you've actually jumped onto it and actioned it within a reasonable amount of time? And that's why utilizing things like the incident report is so important. Now, there are also some additional reporting schemes that you also may need to look at. For example, in Victoria, where it is actually a public holiday today, and we are repeating this session for Victorian agencies as well too, is that there are in some states the requirements to actually report to Safe Work essentially on 2 reporting calendar cycles if you've actually had any specific reports in relation to psychosocial hazards within your agency. So essentially, the governance requirements for your agency is to ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, to ensure workers and other people in the workplace are not exposed to risks to their psychosocial, psychological health, and to eliminate psychosocial risks within the workplace and minimize these risks as far as reasonably practicable. Now, you will see this, and people often go, what the hell does this mean? What do we actually need to do here? What is reasonably practicable, and how do we actually manage this? Well, when you look at all of the summary of the different state legislations of what's going on, and these are summarized here, there is some consistency in how these have actually been unpacked by different government regulators. We can see that there is the National Code of Conduct, and there is the harmonizing of work health and safety legislation around the country, whereas in Victoria, this is part of a separate piece of legislation. But what we do see is that there is the government departments pushing and safe work, pushing you to say, here is how, what you actually need to do. So first one is assembling a compliance and implementation team. So obviously this is often done by people and culture teams to start off with, but bringing in key staff representatives. It sounds like a lot of work, but this is taken directly from SafeWorks directions and also the model code of conduct as well too for work health and safety. It means then that you need to look at key policy documents, and those policy documents is the legal templates I've just shown you. When you look at that, it looks at, well, what are the 5 psychological health and risks that are likely to become the requirements of a prevention plan? And that covers things like aggression and violence, bullying, exposure to traumatic content or events, high job demands, and sexual harassment. It also means that, and this is taken from Safe Work again, about putting structures in to review policies and procedures as well. So when we talk about this and people say, oh my goodness, there's a lot to go on, I will add that it's not just about meeting your work health and safety obligations. It is also about asking, well, who's looking at you? Safe work is one of those areas that are looking at you, but let's be quite clear. If you don't properly engage with staff, then you might fall foul of fair work. If you don't meet your governance obligations and actually implement this, then you'll fall foul of the governance standards as you're required to meet them under the ACNC rules. So essentially, there are a lot of different agencies that are looking at you in terms of this overall picture of meeting your legal compliance obligations. It also means that you could impact upon ARPA requirements. It could also overlap with NDIS and not meeting your legal compliance obligations and director's duties under ASIC and the like. So it becomes very, very complicated very quickly. But that's why it's important when we say who's looking at you, it is not just a safe work issue. So essentially, when we're looking at the psychosocial laws and responsibilities of implementation, it does fall back on you as employers. When we look at what a PCBU is, which, and if you remember my first slide, it was about giving you the templates that you can use. So essentially, it's about you as an agency providing a safe work environment for your personnel and also your clients. And there is the duty of care that's placed onto directors and officers, and directors being the directors of your board, officers being the executive managers and CEO of your companies, to ensure that you meet your obligations. So it brings us back to our legal templates, and essentially to walk you through again, we've got the legal memo about informing staff about what the changes are. We've got the policy template in terms of the mandatory reporting and the code of conduct, and then the incident reporting on the bottom right-hand corner. On the left-hand side is the risk register, which we are going through next week. So when we do look at the Gemba dashboard and the resources that are available to you, it's a single seat that you do have access to, then essentially you can jump in, access the legal resources, and we will send you these out this afternoon. You've got the legal update on the notice board, and clicking on that brings this screen up here, and clicking on the view document link will actually bring up the legal memo that summarizes what the psychosocial laws are. It is a lot to go through on its own, but we have divided this up into a memo style format for yourselves to be able to use. And you can circulate this out to all staff. The other documents that you do have is the policy documents as well too. And again, these are available for you to be able to use within your agency. And if I click on this again and actually show you this, essentially, then what you do have access to is the Gemba Docs. If I click on Gemba Docs, it'll take you into this screen here. You've got the legal templates and the psychosocial policy documents. Now, the policy documents, as I mentioned to you, is the code of conduct and the policy itself. If I open up the policy, which is available to you, and here it is a Word document, you'll find that we focus specifically on what the obligations are for your agency. Here it is here. We've summarized those down and what the obligations are for agencies personnel. And you can simply search and replace this and replace it with your name. It also provides details on what is the obligations that agency staff need to look at and when they need to report any psychosocial issues that they do have. This document is then equally supported by the Code of Conduct document. Now, the Code of Conduct document, if I bring this up here, here it is here, it talks about managing psychosocial hazards. Now, there has been a question in this chat as well too, which I will just raise, about why we didn't put this into a policy document. Now, the reason that we didn't, firstly, it's a huge document. It's 52 plus pages long. The idea of this document is about providing a procedure. So defining what psychosocial hazards are, what the work health and safety obligations are, how to identify these, assess the risk, and control the risk. So it's really a working document. The idea is that this should be a reference guide. So if it does change, you can change this outside your own policy document without having to go through possibly a whole policy reapproval process. The other resource that you do have that's worth looking at is the incident reporting. And if I just go back to your Gemba dashboard, you do have that under the risk management area. And if you click on that, then what you can view is actually the incident report. And if I bring that up by clicking on notification of hazard, here it is here. What you will find is it's a full incident reporting form that you can use, but essentially it gives you the workflows of what you need to look at as well. And this is supported, of course, by the Gemba College space, where you can actually look at all of the past resources as well. Click on that and it will take you into the previous psychosocial laws that you can also view as well too. That's what we really wanted to cover off today for you. It gives you a summary of what your legal compliance obligations are. Next week, we will be looking at the risk register, which covers off your board reporting obligations and executive manager obligations as well too, as part of your psychosocial compliance obligations. Of course, if you have any questions, we do encourage you to reach out to us directly. You can email us, phone us, or call me directly as well too. I will also add that somebody has mentioned to us, if you are jumping onto the Gemba dashboard that you can see here, you will find, and it has popped up a few times while I've been talking as well too, you can also use our chat group as well. Here we are here, and you can view that for you as well. Just put in your name and we'll be able to assist you straight away. With that said, we do look at the recommendations for you to access. We do suggest you to look at these slides. This is a big change that is happening in 2023 and is significant for all not-for-profit and charity organizations right around the country. If you do have any questions, we're more than happy to stay online and answer any questions that you might have. If you are watching this recording after today's live session and do have any questions, we do encourage you to reach out to us on 1300 360 360 or email us at support@gemba360.com.